In the quiet hours of a Sunday night in Memphis, Tennessee, a figure moved through the darkness with quiet precision. The streets were empty, the air heavy with humidity, and most of the city slept unaware of what was unfolding in one of its most secure neighborhoods. A man in a hoodie, gloved hands at his sides, scaled the wall of a private residence and walked straight toward the front door. He wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He knew exactly where he was going. In his pocket, he carried a taser. In his vehicle, parked nearby, police would later find rope and duct tape, tools that hinted at far darker intentions. Inside the home, Memphis Mayor Paul Young was winding down his night. Since taking office in January 2024, his days had been filled with meetings, press conferences, and the never-ending pressures of leading a city struggling with crime, poverty, and political division. His wife and children were nearby, maybe getting ready for bed, maybe already asleep. This was supposed to be their safe space, where the chaos of the outside world couldn't touch them. But as Young glanced at the notification from his Ring doorbell app, that sense of security shattered. The footage showed a man he didn't recognize, standing right at his door, wearing gloves and shifting nervously. The visitor didn't ring the bell. He knocked softly, persistently. It wasn't just the gloves or the hoodie that made the scene feel wrong. It was the man's posture, the tension in his shoulders, the way he looked back and forth, almost like he was making sure no one was watching. Mayor Young didn't open the door. Instead, he froze. A chilling realization washed over him. This man hadn't come by accident. He was here on purpose, and that purpose might be deadly. Within minutes, Young contacted law enforcement. Officers responded quickly, canvassing the area, pulling footage from both public and private security cameras. What they found confirmed the worst fears. The suspect hadn't wandered into the neighborhood. He hadn't taken a wrong turn or confused addresses. He had walked straight from where he entered the neighborhood to the mayor's doorstep. No hesitation, no detour. His mission had been clear. Police later identified the suspect as 25-year-old Trenton Apston. He was arrested after a review of video footage and a search of his vehicle, where investigators found the taser, rope, gloves, and duct tape, items commonly associated with abduction and restraint. During questioning, Abston reportedly admitted to looking up the mayor's address. His stated reason? He wanted to confront Young about the state of crime in Memphis. But the evidence painted a more sinister picture. This wasn't about confrontation. It was an attempted kidnapping. As the news broke, Memphis was stunned. A direct threat on the life of their mayor. In his own home, the attempted crime wasn't just brazen. It was terrifying. The community, already shaken by rising crime rates, was now grappling with the fact that even their highest elected official wasn't safe. And this wasn't an isolated event in the national context. Just hours before the attempted kidnapping, a shocking crime had unfolded in Minnesota, where a gunman had murdered two state lawmakers and injured two others in a politically motivated rampage. The attacks shared a disturbing common thread: anger turned into violence, and elected officials being targeted not just by criticism, but by individuals willing to act on their rage. Mayor Young, reflecting on the incident, drew the connection himself. In a statement released to the public, he expressed deep concern about the dangerous blend of online vitriol and real-world violence. In today's climate, especially after the tragic events in Minnesota and the threats my wife and I often receive online. None of us can be too careful, he wrote. The mayor's message was clear. The boundaries between digital threats and physical danger were rapidly eroding, and in an era where political figures are often vilified online, the jump from hate speech to physical assault feels increasingly short. The attempted kidnapping highlighted another unsettling reality: the ease with which someone like Abston was able to find and approach a high-profile target. Despite the security measures in place, including surveillance systems and gated neighborhoods, Abston had gotten alarmingly close. It raised critical questions. How did he know where the mayor lived? Was he acting alone? Was this truly an isolated incident or part of a broader pattern of radicalized individuals acting on their beliefs? In the aftermath of Abston's arrest, the city of Memphis watched anxiously as the investigation unfolded. Details began to emerge about Abston's background. He wasn't a well-known figure, nor did he appear to be part of any organized group, but he had clearly been motivated by something powerful, perhaps a belief that the city was in decline, that leadership was failing, or that drastic action was required. The line between activism and extremism is razor thin, and Abston had crossed it with alarming ease. For Mayor Young and his family, the trauma lingered. Though no physical harm had come to them, the psychological impact of knowing how close they came to danger couldn't be underestimated. Every creak in the floorboards, every unknown car on the street, it all took on a new weight. The incident became a personal reminder that public service, especially in times of division, is not without peril. Yet the story doesn't end with an arrest. As court proceedings began, the legal system was left to answer the critical question: was Abston truly planning to kidnap the mayor, or was this a misguided attempt at confrontation? Prosecutors charged him with attempted kidnapping, stalking, and aggravated criminal trespass, making clear they believed his intentions were far from innocent. Defense attorneys, once identified, would likely argue mental health issues or lack of concrete evidence for a full abduction plan. But for the citizens of Memphis, and for many watching across the country, the facts remained chilling. A man, armed with tools of restraint and weapons, made a deliberate trip to a political leader's home under the cover of night. Mayor Young took the opportunity to urge a return to civility. Let's raise our discourse, reduce the hate, and protect one another, no matter our beliefs, he said in a public Instagram post that included a photo of his family. Let's reclaim our strength as one community. Let's choose love. His words were powerful, yet they came with a sobering understanding that words alone may no longer be enough to stem the tide of hate. Across the nation, incidents like the one in Memphis are becoming more common. The United States Capitol Police reported over 9,000 threats against federal lawmakers in the past year alone, an 83% increase from the previous year. Local and state officials are facing similar trends, with many reporting that they no longer feel safe attending public events or even living openly in their communities. The shift isn't just alarming, it's transformational. It is changing the very nature of public service in America. The attack on Mayor Young, while foiled, served as a wake-up call. It wasn't a failed robbery or a random act of violence. It was targeted, deliberate, and reflective of a broader national sickness, a growing belief that violence is a legitimate response to political frustration, And while the mayor's courage and quick thinking likely saved his life and the lives of his family, others have not been so fortunate. The Minnesota shooting, just hours earlier, in which Democratic Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed, while Senator John Hoffman and his wife were gravely injured, cast a long dark shadow over the Memphis incident. Two political attacks in 2 days, two cities, multiple lives nearly lost or ended. The connection couldn't be ignored, and it sparked a national conversation about the safety of public servants in the current climate. As Abston awaited his court date in Shelby County Jail, journalists, politicians, and citizens alike speculated on the deeper issues at play. What had radicalized him? How did he go from reading about political issues to becoming the subject of a criminal investigation? Were there warning signs that were missed? And most importantly, how many more like him were out there? These weren't just theoretical questions. They were urgent, and they demanded answers. Law enforcement agencies began reviewing their protocols. Local leaders discussed additional security measures, and voters, many of whom had grown complacent about political safety, were forced to reckon with an uncomfortable truth. Their leaders were under attack. Mayor Young's resilience in the face of terror was admirable. But resilience doesn't erase trauma, nor does it solve the deeper problems that led to the attack in the first place. For Memphis, and for America, the attempted kidnapping was more than a crime. It was a symbol of the dangerous intersection between rhetoric and reality, between anger and action. What made the incident all the more disturbing was its intimacy. This wasn't an attack on a city hall or a protest turned violent. It was one man standing at the front door of another man's home, prepared to harm him. That kind of threat is harder to predict, harder to prevent. It bypasses the traditional safeguards of political security. It speaks to a world where individuals, consumed by their own beliefs, feel empowered to take justice into their own hands. As the case moved through the court system, more details would likely emerge. But even without a full trial, the message had already been sent and received. Public figures, once insulated by status and security, are now increasingly vulnerable. And the public, too, must confront the consequences of the tone and tenor of modern discourse. Mayor Young's message of unity was a plea, not just to his city, but to the country. He survived the knock at the door. Others may not be so lucky. And unless something changes, unless the rhetoric cools, unless the boundaries between protest and persecution are restored, the next knock might not go unanswered. The streets of Memphis eventually returned to normal, but the scars remained. Neighbors installed more cameras. The mayor's home became more heavily protected. Parents held their children a little tighter, and somewhere in the background, the echo of that knock, soft, insistent, full of menace, lingered like a ghost. It was a reminder that safety is never guaranteed, that leadership carries risk, and that in a nation on edge, even the most secure doors can become targets. This wasn't just the story of an attempted kidnapping. It was a story about fear, about a country grappling with how to disagree without violence, about what happens when words become weapons, and when someone decides to act on them. In Memphis, one mayor was lucky. But how long until luck runs out?